The galaxy had already written humanity's obituary. 500,000 years of silence had erased us from history, reduced our name to nothing more than a footnote in the archives of the old Galactic Council. For most species, we were a myth, an extinct civilization that had once burned too brightly, too quickly, before vanishing into the dark. The Sarah Empire, sprawling across 1,000 worlds, was the most certain of our absence. For 500,000 years, they had ruled unchallenged, their fleets moving like tides, their will shaping the politics of entire sectors. And in all that time, not once had they encountered a human voice, a human vessel, or even a human whisper. Until the day we returned. No grand announcement. No declaration of intent. Just, the unmistakable signature of a human warship slipping into the outer sectors. It was not an accident. It was not a test. It was the first move in a campaign we had been planning longer than the Sarah Empire had existed. The galaxy had grown complacent. Over the centuries, the great powers had shifted their attention inward, to trade disputes, cultural preservation, internal politics. The notion that an external threat could suddenly emerge and reshape everything was almost laughable. But humans? We had not been idle in our absence. Beneath the surface of a silent Earth, we had rebuilt. We had studied every known species, dissected every war doctrine, and analyzed the rise and fall of countless empires. We understood their patterns better than they understood themselves. And in that long, hidden exile, our technology had leapt forward in ways the galaxy could not have imagined. Where the Sarah Empire's fleets relied on size and intimidation, humanity's ships were leaner, faster, harder to detect. Where alien militaries built weapons to overpower an opponent, ours were designed to dismantle them, quietly, surgically, without warning. It was not about strength for its own sake. It was about control. The first contact did not happen in the heart of an empire, nor in the halls of a council. It happened in the cold dark between stars, where a Sarah patrol vessel detected a faint anomaly, an energy reading too precise to be natural, but too faint to be a fleet. They approached cautiously, expecting perhaps a smuggler or a malfunctioning probe. Instead, they found themselves facing a single, unfamiliar craft. Its hull design matched nothing in their databases. The Sarah captain hailed it. No response. They tried scanning it. Their sensors failed. And then, without warning, the human ship shifted position, not like a standard maneuver, but as if it had stepped through space. One instant it was in front of them. The next, it was behind, weapons locked. The engagement lasted less than a minute. The Sarah vessel's systems shut down in perfect sequence, propulsion, weapons, communications. Not destroyed, disabled. And then the human ship simply left. It was not a victory. It was a message. The Sarah Empire initially dismissed the incident as a rare technological anomaly, perhaps the work of an experimental pirate faction. But as the weeks passed, more reports surfaced. Patrol ships disabled, communication relays hijacked, supply lines disrupted. In every case, the intruder left without destroying their targets. To the untrained eye, it looked like harassment. To us, it was mapping. Every skirmish was a data point. Every disabled ship was an intelligence source. We were probing their response times, their fleet deployment patterns, their chain of command. And all the while, the rest of the galaxy was watching. Silently noting that the once invincible Sarah Empire was being tested by an enemy they could not even identify. By the time the Galactic Council convened to discuss the incidents, whispers of humanity had already begun to circulate. Some species dismissed it outright, the humans were gone, everyone knew that. Others remembered old stories, of a young, aggressive civilization that had once challenged powers far greater than themselves. The council chambers became a theater of uncertainty. Could this be the return of the humans? If so, what did they want? But humanity made no diplomatic overtures, no attempts to communicate. We had no interest in negotiating from a position of weakness. The first rule of our return was simple: let the galaxy fear before it speaks. The truth was, the Sarah Empire had always feared humanity, even if that fear had been buried under centuries of dominance. In their deepest archives, hidden from public access, were records of the first time they had encountered us. Those records spoke not of defeat, but of hesitation, a recognition that humans were unpredictable, adaptive, and unwilling to accept subjugation. That was why, when humanity disappeared, the Empire had quietly celebrated. No more unpredictable variables. No more risk of an enemy they could not fully understand. But now that we were back, the Empire's strategists were faced with a nightmare. We had been gone long enough to study them without them studying us. Every move we made in those first months was designed for psychological impact. We didn't just disable ships, we left them intact, drifting, with their crews unharmed but shaken. We sabotaged communication hubs in ways that left no physical trace, only corrupted data. We entered restricted space and then vanished before any intercept fleet could arrive. In doing so, we planted an idea in the mind of every commander, every politician, every citizen of the Sarah Empire: if the humans wanted us gone, they could make it happen. And that idea was far more dangerous than any weapon. The strangest part, to the galaxy, was that Earth itself remained invisible. No one could pinpoint where our fleets were launching from. No trade signals, no planetary broadcasts, no signs of a thriving homeworld. It was as if humanity had emerged from nowhere, ghosts with warships. In truth, Earth had been preparing for this moment for millennia. The planet had been transformed into a fortress hidden in plain sight, its defenses layered so deeply that even if a hostile fleet reached orbit, they would find nothing but failure waiting for them. Our power did not lie in the number of ships we had, though those numbers were far greater than anyone suspected. Our power lay in the fact that the galaxy did not know the limits of our strength. By the time the Sarah Empire realized this was no random insurgency, it was already too late. The map of the galaxy had shifted, not in borders, but in confidence. Worlds that had once feared the Empire now questioned its ability to protect them. Neutral systems began reopening old files on human history. Merchants whispered of unseen escorts on their journeys through dangerous space. And through it all, we remained silent. No speeches. No ultimatums. Just the quiet, steady reminder that the galaxy's forgotten predator had returned. The Sarah Empire thought the war had not yet begun. They didn't understand, it was already over. The Sarah Empire had always believed in overwhelming force. When confronted with resistance, they did not negotiate, they crushed it. But against us, their most powerful fleets had nothing to strike. There was no fixed position, no base to siege, no political faction to bribe or infiltrate. We were everywhere and nowhere. We didn't fight their war. We made them fight ours. The first true turning point came when the Empire attempted a full-scale retaliation. They deployed a battle group of 20 ships into what they believed was a human staging area, a cluster of uninhabited systems along the outer arm. When they arrived, the region was empty. Not a single human vessel appeared on their sensors. But as they prepared to withdraw, the system's navigation beacons activated, all of them broadcasting in old human language, one no alien system should have recognized. The message was simple: you are trespassing. Seconds later, every Imperial ship suffered simultaneous system failures. Shields dropped. Weapons went offline. Engines powered down. For 6 hours, they drifted helplessly, listening to the slow, steady broadcast repeat over and over. When they finally regained control, they fled without firing a shot. The incident spread across the galaxy in hours. The Sarah Empire called it a localized sabotage event. But no one believed them. From that moment on, the Empire's power began to erode. Not in the way wars normally unfolded, with destroyed fleets and conquered worlds, but through subtle, precise dismantling of its image. We sabotaged supply lines so quietly that entire convoys vanished without a single distress call. We infiltrated their communication networks, replacing critical orders with false ones that sent their fleets chasing phantoms across empty space. We leaked fragments of classified Imperial documents to neutral systems. Proof of corruption, war crimes, and the Empire's own private fears about humanity's return. It wasn't just military defeat we were after. We wanted them to doubt themselves. For centuries, the Serra Empire had been the pillar of stability in the galaxy, even for those who despised their rule. Now, every system was watching to see if they could hold that position. When their patrol fleets began hesitating at the borders, when governors quietly increased planetary defenses without orders, when traders openly questioned whether Imperial protection meant anything at all, the balance shifted. And the galaxy began whispering our name again. Among those watching were the Harari, a reclusive, neutral species whose territory was a vast expanse of dark, uncharted space. They rarely interacted with outsiders, and when they did, it was only on their terms. But shortly after the trespassing incident, they made contact. Not with the Empire, with us. The Harari were not afraid. Their message was calm, almost clinical: we see what you are doing. You will win. But the Serra are not the threat you should be preparing for. When pressed, they offered no details. Only a warning: the ones who built the first cities in the stars will return. And they will not come as you do. The Harari called them the architects. The Serra Empire dismissed the Harari as irrelevant. But to us, their words mattered. We had planned this war for centuries, but now, we understood it might only be the opening act in something far larger. Still, the Empire had to fall before we could prepare for what was coming. And so we tightened the noose. Trade hubs once loyal to the Empire began declaring independent neutrality, a polite way of saying they no longer recognized imperial authority. Outer colonies stopped paying taxes. Local militias formed without imperial sanction. The Empire responded with crackdowns, but every overreach played into our hands. Each act of repression drove more worlds away. Our own fleets remained largely unseen. Most Imperial commanders had never actually faced a human warship, they only knew the aftermath: disabled ships, missing convoys, intercepted communications. But when we did appear, it was deliberate, theatrical. A lone cruiser emerging in the middle of an Imperial convoy, weapons charged but silent. A human battleship shadowing a transport for days, never firing, just letting its presence be felt. These encounters created stories, and stories are harder to kill than ships. The Serra Empire's greatest weapon had always been fear. They didn't need to occupy every world because every world believed the Empire could destroy them if they resisted. We dismantled that belief piece by piece. We proved the Empire could be challenged, humiliated, beaten, and done so without the total destruction they always promised would follow. By the time the first Imperial fleets actually faced human forces in open battle, the psychological war was already won. The commanders hesitated. The crews doubted. And in space, hesitation is death. We could have ended the war in secret, leaving the galaxy unsure of what had happened. But that was never our plan. We wanted the galaxy to know, not just that humanity had returned, but that we had returned on our terms. So we chose one final, deliberate display. We struck the Imperial capital. Not with fleets or orbital bombardment, but with something far more precise. We took control of every planetary broadcast system and replaced their signal with a live image of Earth. Not the Earth of old archives, not ruined, not desolate, but a living, thriving world. Cities gleaming under blue skies, oceans untouched by pollution, and a fleet in low orbit that dwarfed anything the galaxy had seen in millennia. The message was simple, spoken in every major galactic language: we are here. We are watching. And we are ready. The Serra Empire did not fall in a single day, but from that moment on, its collapse was inevitable. Entire sectors seceded. Fleets refused orders. Even imperial citizens began demanding peace. For us, the war was over. The Empire could no longer threaten us. But the Harari's warning lingered. Because if they were right, we had just stepped back onto the galactic stage, only to find we were not the only ones returning from the shadows. And whatever the architects were, they might make even the Sera Empire look small. The Sera Empire was gone. Not destroyed, dismantled. Their fleets still patrolled fractured territories, but no one feared them anymore. They had become just another regional power in a galaxy that had suddenly realized the balance could change. And we had made sure that balance now tilted in our favor. But in the silence that followed, our thoughts returned to the Harari's warning. The ones who built the first cities in the stars will return. And they will not come as you do. It began with whispers from deep space prospectors. Ships vanishing at the edges of mapped space. Not destroyed, erased. No debris, no distress calls. Sensors reported impossible readings in those regions, gravitational anomalies that did not match any known object. At first, we dismissed it as rumor. Space is vast, and things vanish in it all the time. But then the Harari contacted us again. Their message was brief: they have awakened. This time, they spoke more. The architects were not a species in the way we understood it. They were originators. Not of life, but of structure, the designers of the first interstellar civilizations, the creators of artificial worlds older than most stars. The Harari claimed their own people had been shaped, in part, by the architects' interventions. And that the Sera Empire's rise, like countless other empires before it, was only a placeholder, a temporary order in a galaxy the architects had been quietly cultivating for 500,000 years. They do not build for you, the Harari said. They build for themselves. And when they return, it is not to rule, it is to reclaim. We began searching for traces of them. Buried beneath the ruins of forgotten colonies, we found fragments, structures designed with no regard for biology as we knew it. Passageways too narrow for organics but too precise for natural formation. Materials that had not corroded in 500,000 years. On one derelict moon, our probes discovered an underground city built entirely from a single piece of matter, as if the entire construct had been grown, not assembled. And in its center was a chamber filled with what looked like stasis vaults. All of them were empty. The first confirmed sighting was not ours. It came from a neutral research vessel operating beyond Harari space. Their last transmission showed something emerging from a collapsed star, a construct larger than any known station, unfolding like a blooming flower. Then the signal ended. When our scouts arrived weeks later, there was nothing left. No wreckage. No radiation signature. Not even dust. It was as if the system had been cleaned. We did not yet know what the architects wanted. The Harari spoke of them as inevitabilities, not enemies. They will not bargain. They will not threaten. They will simply act. But there was one clue: every system the architects touched had been stripped of its infrastructure, not destroyed, but harvested. Stations, cities, even moons were gone, their mass converted into something we could not track. It was as if the galaxy itself was raw material for a design only they could see. The galaxy began to panic. Former Sera territories pleaded for our protection. Neutral systems opened their ports to human fleets, not out of trust, but because they knew our military power was the only force still growing. For the first time in 500,000 years, humanity stood not as an exile, not as a hidden threat, but as the center of a galactic coalition, an uneasy one, built on survival rather than friendship. And we faced a choice: do we fight to preserve this galaxy as it is, flawed and fractured? Or do we let the architects reshape it into something that may no longer have a place for any of us? The choice came sooner than we expected. An architect vessel, if vessel is even the right word, entered the outer edge of human-claimed space. It moved without any visible propulsion, its surface a shifting lattice of metallic patterns. When hailed, it did not respond. When scanned, it returned data that made no sense, as if the object existed in multiple locations at once. We sent a fleet. The moment our ships closed to weapons range, the architect construct altered shape, surrounding one of our cruisers. Not firing. Not damaging. Just, holding it. After 12 minutes, the cruiser was released, completely intact, but every system had been wiped clean. Not destroyed, just, blank. Inside that cruiser, the crew was unharmed, but their memories of the encounter were gone. Every log, every fragment of data about the event, erased from both machine and mind. The only thing left was a single phrase, carved into the ship's hull in English: "This design is not yours." We realized then that the architects were not merely reclaiming matter. They were reclaiming patterns. Star systems, technology, even thought, all of it part of a blueprint we had never known existed. And they had noticed our alterations. Humanity began mobilizing again, but this time it was different. We could not rely on the same strategies we used against the Sarah Empire. This was not a war of fear or politics. It was not even clear if it was war at all. It was a correction. All across known space, worlds went silent, waiting to see what humanity would do. The Harari withdrew entirely, sealing their borders. The remnants of the Sarah Empire offered their fleets to join ours. We accepted, not because we trusted them, but because against the architects, even old enemies became necessary allies. For the first time, the galaxy's survival depended not on diplomacy, but on whether humanity could adapt to a threat older than civilization itself. The architects have not yet struck in force. Perhaps they are still watching. Perhaps they are testing. Or perhaps they are simply deciding which parts of the galaxy's design are worth keeping, and which will be erased. We do not know how to fight them. We do not even know if they can be fought. But we know this. Humanity has returned to the galactic stage. And now, the true test begins.